The morning sun had barely touched the rooftops of the small town when 12-year-old Maya stepped out of her tiny apartment. She wore a faded blue dress that had been washed so many times the color had almost disappeared. Her shoes had small holes near the toes, but she had carefully covered them with black marker so nobody would notice. Today was a special day. Today, she would finally ask the question she had been afraid to ask for 3 whole months. Maya lived with her grandmother in a 2-room apartment above an old bakery. The smell of fresh bread would wake her up every morning, and sometimes the kind baker would give her day-old pastries that nobody had bought. She never complained about her life. She knew many children had less than she did. But there was one thing Maya wanted more than anything else in the world, and that thing seemed as far away as the stars in the night sky. Her mother had died 2 years ago from a sickness that came suddenly and took her away within weeks. Before she got sick, Maya's mother had been a piano teacher. She taught children from rich families in their big houses, and sometimes she would bring Maya along. While her mother gave lessons, Maya would sit quietly in the corner, watching her mother's fingers dance across the black and white keys. The music that came from those pianos was the most beautiful thing Maya had ever heard. Her mother had promised to teach Maya how to play. Every night before bed, she would say, "One day, my little bird, I will teach you to make music that touches people's hearts." But that day never came. The sickness came first, and then her mother was gone, taking the promise with her. After her mother's death, Maya and her grandmother had to sell everything they owned to pay the hospital bills. They sold the furniture, the television, the nice dishes, and even her mother's jewelry. But Maya had begged her grandmother to keep one thing, just one thing, the old piano that sat in the corner of their living room. Her grandmother had agreed, even though they could have gotten good money for it. That piano was the only piece of her mother that Maya had left. Every day after school, Maya would sit at the piano and try to remember what her mother had taught her. She had only learned the basics, just a few simple songs and some scales. But she practiced those same things over and over again, her small fingers pressing the keys that her mother's fingers had once touched. Sometimes, she would close her eyes and imagine her mother sitting beside her, guiding her hands, telling her she was doing well. But Maya knew that if she wanted to truly learn, if she wanted to play the way her mother had played, she needed a real teacher. And teachers cost money that she and her grandmother did not have. 3 months ago, Maya had discovered something that gave her hope. The town's community center had started offering free music lessons to children. A famous music school from the city had partnered with the center to give children from poor families a chance to learn. Maya had read about it in a flyer posted on the bakery's window. Her heart had nearly jumped out of her chest when she saw it. There was a problem. The lessons were only for certain instruments like violin, flute, and guitar. Piano was not on the list. Maya had walked past the community center many times since then, watching children go in with their instrument cases, wishing she could be one of them. She had noticed that inside the center in the main hall there was a beautiful grand piano. It sat in the corner, covered with a cloth, never used. Every time she saw it, her heart ached. Today, Maya had finally gathered enough courage to ask if she could learn piano too. Maybe, she thought, they would say yes. Maybe they would see how much she wanted it and give her a chance. She had practiced what she would say in front of the mirror last night. She had tried to make herself look as neat and presentable as possible. She had even borrowed a ribbon from her grandmother to tie her hair back. As Maya walked toward the community center, her heart beat faster with each step. The center was in the nicest part of town, where the streets were clean and the houses were big. She felt out of place here, like a sparrow that had accidentally flown into a cage of peacocks. But she kept walking, her mother's face in her mind, giving her strength. When she reached the community center, she saw a group of children standing outside with their parents. They were waiting for the doors to open. The children wore clean, pressed clothes and shiny shoes. Their parents carried expensive-looking instrument cases. Maya suddenly felt very aware of her faded dress and her marker-covered shoes. She stood at the edge of the group, trying to make herself as small as possible. A woman with hair and expensive jewelry looked at Maya with confusion. She leaned toward another mother and whispered something. Both women looked at Maya and then looked away, as if she was something unpleasant they did not want to see. Maya pretended not to notice. She focused on the door, waiting for it to open, rehearsing her words in her head. Finally, the doors opened and everyone went inside. The interior of the community center was beautiful. There were paintings on the walls, fresh flowers in vases, and soft music playing from hidden speakers. Maya's eyes immediately went to the grand piano in the corner. It was even more beautiful up close. It was black and shiny, and she could see her reflection in its polished surface. A tall woman with gray hair sat behind a desk near the entrance. She was checking names off a list as parents signed their children in. Maya waited until all the other children had been checked in. Then, with her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, she walked up to the desk. The woman looked up at her with a polite but distant smile. She looked at Maya's dress, her shoes, her borrowed ribbon. Her smile faded just a little bit. "Can I help you?" she asked. Maya took a deep breath. Her voice came out smaller than she had hoped. "I want to learn piano," she said. "I saw that you give free lessons here. I was wondering if maybe, please, you could teach me piano too." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. She looked down at her papers, then back at Maya. "Piano is not part of our program," she said. "We only offer lessons for violin, flute, and guitar." "I know," Maya said quickly, "but I saw the piano over there. It looks like nobody uses it. Maybe someone could teach me on that piano. I would practice very hard. I promise I would not cause any trouble." The woman sighed. It was a sigh that Maya had heard many times in her life. It was the sigh that adults made when they thought a child was asking for something impossible. "I am sorry," the woman said, "but that is not how our program works. We do not have a piano teacher, and even if we did, our program is already full. There is no room for additional students." Maya felt her hope beginning to crack, but she did not give up. "I could wait," she said. "I could come back every week until there is room, or maybe I could just practice on the piano by myself. I would not need a teacher. I just need a piano to practice on, please." The woman's face hardened. She clearly did not have time for this conversation. "Young lady, this piano is not for public use. It is for special performances and events. I cannot allow random children to come in and play on it. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." Maya stood there feeling like she had been slapped. Random children. That is what she was to this woman. Just a random child with no right to touch the beautiful piano. She turned to walk away, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. But as she turned, she found herself facing a group of children who had been watching the whole thing. They were the children from outside, the ones with the nice clothes and the expensive instruments. And they were smiling, but not kind smiles. These were the smiles of children who had found something amusing, something to laugh at. A girl with long brown hair and a pink dress stepped forward from the group. Her name was Charlotte, and Maya recognized her from school. Charlotte's father owned the biggest company in town, and Charlotte never let anyone forget it. She had the clothes, the best toys, and the attention of every teacher. She also had a talent for making other children feel small. "Did you really just ask to use that piano?" Charlotte asked, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "That piano costs more than your entire apartment building." The other children laughed. Some of the parents nearby heard too, but they did not say anything to stop it. Some of them even smiled as if Charlotte had said something clever. Maya felt her face grow hot. She wanted to say something back, something that would make Charlotte stop laughing, but the words stuck in her throat like stones. She had never been good at standing up for herself. Her mother had always told her to be kind, even to people who were not kind to her, but right now, being kind felt impossible. "Look at her dress," another girl said. "Did she find it in the garbage?" More laughter. Maya looked down at her dress, the dress her grandmother had bought her with money saved from weeks of selling vegetables at the market. It was clean and ironed with care. Her grandmother had worked hard to buy it, and now these children were laughing at it as if it was worthless. "Maybe she thinks she can be a pianist," Charlotte continued. "But everyone knows you need talent to play piano, and talent is something you are born with. You cannot just decide to have it because you want it." Maya finally found her voice. It came out quiet but steady. "My mother was a piano teacher. She taught me. I just want to learn more." Charlotte tilted her head, pretending to think about this. "Oh, your mother was a piano teacher. Then where is she? Why is she not teaching you?" The question hit Maya like a punch to the chest. For a moment, she could not breathe. She could not believe that someone would ask such a cruel question. But before she could answer, Charlotte's own mother walked over. She was a tall woman with perfectly styled hair and a look of permanent disapproval on her face. "Charlotte, stop wasting time with this girl," her mother said. "You have your violin lesson in 5 minutes. Go get ready." Charlotte gave Maya one last mocking smile before walking away. The other children followed her, still giggling among themselves. Maya was left standing alone in the middle of the beautiful lobby, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. She walked out of the community center with her head down. The tears she had been holding back finally started to fall, running down her cheeks and dripping onto her faded blue dress. She walked quickly, not wanting anyone to see her crying. She walked past the nice houses and the clean streets, through the market square where vendors were setting up their stalls, and finally back to the old bakery where she lived. When she climbed the stairs to her apartment, her grandmother was sitting in the kitchen, cutting vegetables for dinner. Her grandmother was a small woman with white hair and hands that were rough from years of hard work, but her eyes were kind, and when she saw Maya's face, she immediately put down her knife. "Maya, what happened?" she asked, opening her arms. Maya ran into her grandmother's embrace and cried. She cried for her mother, who was gone. She cried for the piano she could not learn. She cried for the mean children who had laughed at her. She cried until she had no more tears left, and then she told her grandmother everything. Her grandmother listened without interrupting. When Maya finished, her grandmother was quiet for a long moment. Then she took Maya's face in her hands and looked into her eyes. "Maya, listen to me," she said. "Those children were wrong to laugh at you, and that woman was wrong to turn you away. But you must not let their cruelty kill your dream. Your mother would not want that." "But grandmother, how can I learn piano if nobody will teach me? How can I practice if we do not have money for lessons?" Her grandmother smiled, a small sad smile that held years of wisdom. "You have our piano, do you not? The piano your mother played. You can practice on that piano every day. And as for a teacher, well, your mother may not be here in body, but her spirit is still with you. Let her memory guide your fingers. Let your love for her teach you what she could not." Maya wiped her eyes. "Do you really think I can learn by myself?" "I think you can do anything you set your mind to," her grandmother said. "You are your mother's daughter. You have her talent, her heart, and her determination. Those children at the community center, they have expensive teachers and fancy instruments. But they do not have what you have. They do not have a reason to play that comes from their soul." That night after dinner, Maya sat down at her mother's old piano. It was not shiny and grand like the one at the community center. The wood was scratched, and some of the keys were slightly yellow with age. But to Maya, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She placed her fingers on the keys, feeling the familiar smooth surface, and she began to play. She played the simple songs her mother had taught her. She played scales, going up and down, until her fingers ached. She closed her eyes and tried to hear her mother's voice in her head, telling her to keep her wrists relaxed, to feel the music in her heart before letting it out through her hands. From that night on, Maya practiced every single day. She woke up early in the morning to practice before school. She came home in the afternoon and practiced until dinner. After dinner, she practiced again until her grandmother told her it was time for bed. She practiced until her fingers were sore and her eyes were heavy. She practiced until the simple songs became easy, and then she started trying harder pieces. She did not have sheet music for complicated songs, so she listened to recordings on an old radio and tried to play what she heard. It was frustrating at first. She made many mistakes, but slowly, note by note, she began to figure it out. She discovered that she had a gift, the same gift her mother had. She could hear a piece of music once and remember most of it. She could feel where the notes wanted to go, even before she knew their names. Weeks turned into months. The weather grew cold, then warm again. Maya continued to practice, never missing a single day. Her grandmother would sit in the corner of the room, knitting scarves and hats to sell at the market, listening to Maya play. Sometimes she would cry quietly because the music reminded her of her daughter, but they were not entirely sad tears. There was pride mixed in with the grief. Maya started learning pieces that she had heard her mother play years ago. There was one piece in particular that had been her mother's favorite. It was a complicated piece by a famous composer, full of fast runs and difficult chord changes. Her mother had played it at a concert once, and Maya had sat in the audience, amazed by the beauty of it. Now, Maya was determined to learn it herself. It took her 4 months to learn that piece. 4 months of practicing the same passages over and over until they sounded right. 4 months of frustration and tears and moments when she wanted to give up. But she did not give up. Every time she felt like quitting, she would remember her mother's face and she would keep going. On the anniversary of her mother's death, Maya sat down at the piano and played that piece from beginning to end without a single mistake. Her grandmother sat beside her, tears streaming down her face. When Maya finished, her grandmother took her hands and kissed them. "Your mother is proud of you," she whispered. "Wherever she is smiling right now." Maya believed it. She could almost feel her mother's presence in the room, warm and comforting, like a gentle breeze on a summer day. 1 year after Maya had been turned away from the community center, something unexpected happened. A poster appeared on the window of the bakery downstairs. It announced a town-wide talent competition, open to all children between the ages of 8 and 16. The competition would take place in 3 months, and the winner would receive a scholarship to study at the famous music academy in the city, the very same music academy that had partnered with the community center to offer free lessons. Maya stared at the poster for a long time. Her heart beat fast as she read the words over and over again. A scholarship, a chance to study at a real music school, a chance to become the pianist her mother had always believed she could be. It seemed too good to be true. But there was a problem. Actually, there were several problems. To enter the competition, each participant had to audition first. The auditions would be held at the community center, the same place where Maya had been humiliated and turned away. The judges would be teachers from the music academy, and they would decide who was good enough to compete in the final competition. Maya was afraid. What if they turned her away again? What if they remembered her and refused to let her audition? What if the same children were there, ready to laugh at her again? She almost decided not to try. It would be easier to stay home, to keep practicing on her mother's old piano, to never face those people again. But then she thought about her mother. Her mother had never been afraid of anything. When people had looked down on her for being a piano teacher instead of a performer, she had kept teaching with pride. When money was tight, she had worked extra hours, never complaining, always smiling. When she had gotten sick, she had faced it with courage, telling Maya not to be sad, telling her that everything would be all right. Maya knew what her mother would say if she were here. She would say that fear was not a good reason to give up on a dream. She would say that the only way to truly fail was to never try at all. So Maya decided to enter the competition. She told her grandmother that night over dinner. Her grandmother put down her spoon and looked at Maya with surprise that slowly turned into joy. "You are sure?" her grandmother asked. "I am sure," Maya said. "I do not know if I am good enough. I do not know if they will even let me audition, but I have to try. I have to do this for mother." Her grandmother reached across the table and took Maya's hand. "Then we will make sure you are ready. We have 3 months. We will use every minute of it." And so the preparation began. Maya practiced harder than she had ever practiced before. She woke up at 5 in the morning and practiced until it was time for school. She came home and practiced until midnight. She practiced until her fingers cramped and her back ached and her eyes could barely stay open. But she did not stop. Her grandmother helped in every way she could. She cooked extra food so Maya would have energy. She made Maya stretch her fingers and hands between practice sessions so she would not get injured. She sat and listened for hours, offering encouragement when Maya got frustrated, celebrating small victories when Maya finally mastered a difficult passage. Her audition piece, Maya chose the complicated piece that had been her mother's favorite. She had already learned it, but now she worked on making it perfect. She practiced each section hundreds of times. She experimented with different speeds and dynamics, trying to find the interpretation that felt most right. She listened to recordings of famous pianists playing the same piece, learning from their techniques while adding her own emotions. As the weeks passed, something magical started to happen. Maya's playing transformed. She was no longer just hitting the right notes at the right time. She was making music, real music, music that had feeling and depth and meaning. When she played, the old piano in their tiny apartment seemed to come alive. The scratches and yellowed keys did not matter. What mattered was the sound, and the sound was beautiful. One evening, about 6 weeks before the audition, there was a knock on their apartment door. Maya and her grandmother looked at each other in surprise. They rarely had visitors. Maya stopped playing and her grandmother went to answer the door. Standing outside was Mr., the old baker who owned the shop downstairs. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke to anyone, spending most of his time alone in his bakery, making bread and pastries. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I am sorry to disturb you," he said, "but I could not help overhearing the piano music. It comes through the floor of my shop. I hear it every day, all day. At first I thought it was a radio, but then I realized it was someone actually playing." Maya felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. "I am so sorry, mister. I did not mean to disturb you. I will try to play more quietly." But Mr. shook his head. "No, no, you do not understand. The music does not disturb me. It is the opposite. It is the most beautiful thing I have heard in years. It makes my work easier. It makes my customers smile. They always ask me what lovely music is playing, and I tell them it is the angel who lives upstairs." Maya did not know what to say. No one except her grandmother had ever heard her play. She had never thought about how the sound might travel through the thin floors and walls of the old building. Mr. continued, "I came to ask you something. This Saturday I am hosting a small gathering for my regular customers, a celebration for the 25th anniversary of my bakery. I was wondering if you would be willing to play piano at the celebration. Just a few songs, nothing fancy. I would pay you, of course." Maya's grandmother stepped forward. "That is very kind of you, mister. Maya would be honored." And so, that Saturday, Maya performed for an audience for the first time in her life. The bakery had been decorated with flowers and ribbons. About 30 people had gathered, eating pastries and drinking tea. In the corner, they had somehow managed to bring down Maya's piano from the apartment. Mr. had hired 2 strong men to carry it down the narrow stairs. Maya was terrified. Her hands were shaking as she sat down at the piano. She looked out at the crowd of faces, all watching her, waiting for her to play. For a moment she could not move. Her mind went blank and she forgot everything she had practiced. Then she saw her grandmother standing at the back of the room, smiling at her with so much love and pride. And suddenly, Maya was not afraid anymore. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. She played 3 pieces that afternoon. She started with a gentle, calm song to warm up. Then she played a lively, happy piece that made people tap their feet and smile. And finally, she played her mother's favorite piece, the complicated one that she had spent so long learning. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Maya opened her eyes, afraid that she had made mistakes, afraid that the audience had not liked her playing. But then she saw that several people were crying, and then everyone started clapping. They clapped so hard and so long that Maya did not know what to do. She just sat there, tears running down her own face, feeling something she had not felt in a long time. She felt happy. After the gathering, people came up to her one by one to thank her. They told her that her music had touched their hearts. They told her that she had a gift. An old woman with gray hair and kind eyes took Maya's hands and said, "Your mother must be very proud of you wherever she is." Maya went home that night with two things she had not had that morning. She had money, the payment from Mr., which she immediately gave to her grandmother for household expenses, and she had confidence. For the first time, she truly believed that she was good enough to audition, good enough to compete, maybe even good enough to win. The audition was now 1 month away. Maya practiced even harder, fueled by her new confidence and the memory of the applause at the bakery. She was ready to face the community center again. She was ready to face Charlotte and the other children who had laughed at her. She was ready to show them what she could do. The morning of the audition arrived cold and gray. Rain had fallen all night, leaving the streets wet and the sky heavy with clouds. Maya woke up before her alarm, her stomach tight with nerves. She lay in bed for a few minutes, listening to the raindrops tap against her window, trying to calm her racing heart. She got up and went through her morning routine slowly and carefully. She washed her face with warm water. She brushed her hair until it shone and tied it back with the same ribbon she had worn a year ago when she had first asked to learn piano. She put on a dress that her grandmother had made for this special day. It was simple but elegant, dark blue with small white flowers embroidered along the collar. Her grandmother had worked on it every night for 2 weeks, sewing by candlelight to save electricity. When Maya came out of her room, her grandmother was already awake, setting the table for breakfast. There was bread with butter, fresh fruit, and a cup of warm milk. It was more than they usually ate in the morning, but her grandmother had wanted to make sure Maya had enough energy for the important day ahead. They ate in silence, neither of them knowing what to say. The weight of the moment hung in the air between them, heavy and full of meaning. When they finished, Maya stood up to wash the dishes, but her grandmother stopped her. "Today you are the performer," her grandmother said. "Let me take care of this. You go and prepare yourself. Warm up your fingers, focus your mind." Maya went to the piano and sat down. She did not play any full pieces. She just did simple exercises, letting her fingers move across the keys in familiar patterns. She thought about her mother, imagining her sitting beside her, offering words of encouragement. She thought about all the hours of practice, all the difficult moments, all the times she had wanted to give up but did not. She thought about the baker's celebration and the applause that had given her confidence. At 10 o'clock, Maya and her grandmother left the apartment. They walked through the rain together, sharing one umbrella. Maya carried a folder with the sheet music for her audition piece, even though she had memorized every single note. It made her feel safer to have it with her, like a good luck charm. The community center looked the same as it had a year ago. The same beautiful building, the same clean streets, the same feeling of not belonging. But this time, Maya walked in with her head held high. She was not a random child asking for a favor. She was a musician coming to audition. She had earned this right through hard work and dedication. Inside, the lobby was crowded with children and parents. Maya saw instruments everywhere, violins in cases, flutes in bags, guitars strapped to backs. Everyone seemed nervous. Children were practicing last-minute scales, parents were adjusting clothes and hair, teachers from the music academy were walking around with clipboards, calling names. Maya looked around for a familiar face and found one immediately. Charlotte was standing near the front desk, surrounded by her usual group of friends. She was wearing an expensive dress made of red silk, and her violin case was shiny and new. Her mother stood beside her, talking to one of the teachers with an air of importance. Charlotte spotted Maya at the same moment. Her eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed in disbelief. She whispered something to her friends, and they all turned to look at Maya. A few of them laughed quietly behind their hands. Maya felt a flash of fear, but she pushed it down. She was not here to impress Charlotte. She was here for herself, for her mother, for her grandmother. She turned away from the group and walked toward the registration desk. A different woman sat behind the desk today. She was younger than the gray-haired woman from before, with a friendly face and warm eyes. She smiled when Maya approached. "Name?" she asked. Maya said. "I am here to audition for the talent competition." The woman looked down at her list and found Maya's name. "Ah, yes, piano audition. You are number 47. Please wait in the hall until your number is called." Maya was surprised. She had expected more questions, more resistance, but this woman treated her just like everyone else, just another participant, just another musician. Maya and her grandmother found seats in the back of the waiting hall. From there, they could see the door to the audition room, where children went in one at a time and came out looking either happy or disappointed. The wait was long. Each audition took about 10 minutes, and there were 46 people ahead of Maya. As the hours passed, Maya watched the other children come and go. She heard bits of music through the walls when the door opened, glimpses of violins and flutes and guitars. Some of the music was beautiful. Some of it was average. A few performances made her nervous because they were so good. Around lunchtime, Charlotte's name was called. She walked toward the audition room with confidence, her red dress swishing around her legs. Her mother followed her to the door, offering last-minute advice. Charlotte went inside and the door closed behind her. 10 minutes later, Charlotte came out. She was smiling, a satisfied smile that said she knew she had done well. Her mother hugged her and kissed her cheeks. They walked past Maya without even glancing at her, too happy with their own success to care about anyone else. Maya's number was finally called at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By then, she had been waiting for 5 hours. Her back was stiff from sitting and her nerves had reached a peak. But when she heard her number, something strange happened. All the fear and anxiety seemed to drain away, leaving behind a calm emptiness. It was time. She stood up and looked at her grandmother. Her grandmother took her hands and squeezed them tightly. "Remember who you are," her grandmother said. "Remember why you are here. Your mother is watching over you. Make her proud." Maya nodded. She walked toward the audition room, her folder of sheet music clutched against her chest. The door seemed to grow larger as she approached it. She took one last deep breath, opened the door, and stepped inside. The audition room was bigger than she had expected. It was a performance hall, with rows of empty seats facing a stage. On the stage was the grand piano she had seen a year ago, the same one she had asked to practice on. It sat there under the bright lights, black and shiny and magnificent. 3 judges sat at a table in front of the stage. 2 women and 1 man, all of them dressed formally, all of them holding pens over notebooks. They looked up when Maya entered, their faces neutral and professional. "Maya," one of the women asked. "Yes," Maya said. "Please take your place at the piano. You have 10 minutes to perform your audition piece. You may begin when you are ready." Maya walked up to the stage. Her shoes made soft sounds on the wooden floor. She climbed the steps and approached the piano. It was even more beautiful up close than she had imagined. The keys were perfectly white, the surface perfectly polished. She could see her reflection in it, a small girl in a blue dress, about to play the most important music of her life. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it to the right height. She placed her sheet music on the stand, even though she knew she would not need it. She positioned her hands over the keys, feeling their smooth coolness against her fingertips. For a moment she just sat there, breathing. She thought about her mother. She thought about the tiny apartment with the old piano. She thought about all the mornings and evenings and late nights of practice. She thought about the baker's celebration and the tears in people's eyes when she had finished playing. Then she began. The first notes floated out into the silent room, soft and delicate. Maya closed her eyes and let the music take over. She did not think about the judges watching her. She did not think about the competition or the scholarship. She thought only about the music, letting it flow through her fingers like water, letting it fill the room like light. The piece built slowly, starting gentle and growing more complex. Maya's fingers danced across the keys, moving from one passage to the next without hesitation. She played with everything she had, all her skill, all her emotion, all her love for her mother. The piano responded to her touch, singing out beautiful sounds that echoed off the walls of the empty hall. When she reached the final section, the most difficult part, she did not slow down or hold back. She attacked the keys with confidence, her fingers flying so fast they seemed to blur. The music swelled to a climax, filling every corner of the room with its power. And then, with one final chord, it was over. Maya lifted her hands from the keys. The silence that followed was almost deafening. She opened her eyes and looked at the judges. All 3 of them were staring at her with strange expressions. The man had put down his pen. One of the women had her hand over her mouth. The other woman was leaning forward in her seat, as if she had been pulled toward the stage by an invisible force. For a long, terrible moment, no one said anything. Maya felt her heart start to race again. Had she made a mistake? Had she played too fast or too slow, or hit a wrong note without realizing it? Then the man spoke. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Maya did not know how to answer. She thought about her mother, about the old piano, about the year of practicing alone. She thought about Charlotte's mocking words, about talent being something you were born with. Maybe Charlotte was right about that part, But talent alone was not enough. Talent without hard work was just potential. Maya had taken her potential and turned it into something real. "My mother taught me," Maya said finally, "and after she died I taught myself." The judges exchanged glances with each other. Something passed between them, a silent communication that Maya could not read. Then the first woman smiled, just a little, and wrote something in her notebook. "Thank you, Maya," she said. "You may go." Maya walked out of the audition room in a daze. She did not know if she had done well or poorly. The judges' faces had been so hard to read. That moment of silence after she finished playing kept replaying in her mind. What had it meant? Was it amazement or disappointment? Her grandmother was waiting for her in the hall, standing near the door with anxious eyes. When she saw Maya come out, she hurried over. "How did it go?" she asked, searching Maya's face for clues. "I do not know," Maya said honestly. "I played the best I could, but I cannot tell what the judges thought." Her grandmother hugged her tightly. "Then you have done everything you can. The rest is in the hands of fate. Come, let us go home. You must be exhausted." They walked home through streets that were now dry, the afternoon sun having chased away the morning rain. Maya was quiet the whole way, lost in thought. Part of her felt proud for having the courage to audition. Another part of her was already preparing for rejection, building walls around her heart to protect it from disappointment. The results would be posted in 1 week. 7 days of waiting, 7 days of not knowing. It was going to be the longest week of Maya's life. She tried to continue her normal routine during that week. She went to school, she did her homework, she helped her grandmother with chores. But she could not bring herself to practice piano. Every time she sat down at the old instrument, she felt a strange mix of emotions that made it hard to play. So she left the piano alone, its keys untouched, waiting just like she was waiting. On the 7th day, Maya woke up before dawn. She could not sleep anyway, so there was no point staying in bed. She got dressed quietly, not wanting to wake her grandmother, and slipped out of the apartment. The streets were empty and silent, painted in the gray light before sunrise. She walked toward the community center, her heart pounding with each step. When she arrived, she saw that a small crowd had already gathered outside. Other children from the auditions were there with their parents, all of them staring at a piece of paper that had been posted on the front door. Maya could not see what it said from where she was standing. She was too far away and too afraid to get closer. She watched as some children walked away from the door with tears in their eyes. Others walked away smiling and hugging their parents. One by one, the crowd thinned until there were only a few people left. Maya gathered her courage and approached. The paper on the door was a list of names. It was titled Finalists for the annual talent competition. Below the title were 12 names, the 12 children who had been selected to compete in the final round. Maya read the list from top to bottom. She did not see her name. Her heart sank and she felt tears begin to form in her eyes. She had failed. After everything, she had not been good enough. But then she noticed something. There was a second page, partially hidden behind the first. She moved the first page aside and saw another list. This one was titled Piano Finalists, and it had only one name on it. Maya. She read the name 3 times, unable to believe her eyes. Her name. Her name was on the list. She had made it to the final competition. She was the only pianist who had. She ran all the way home. She burst through the apartment door, not caring about the noise, and found her grandmother already awake, making tea in the kitchen. "I made it," Maya shouted. "Grandmother, I made it. I am in the final competition." Her grandmother dropped the teapot. It fell to the floor and shattered, spreading tea across the old wooden boards, but neither of them cared about the mess. They hugged each other and cried and laughed at the same time, their joy too big to contain. The final competition was scheduled for 2 weeks later. It would be held in the town's main theater, a grand old building that could hold 500 people. The event was open to the public, and tickets had been selling quickly. Everyone wanted to see the talented young musicians compete for the scholarship. Maya had 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to perfect her performance, 2 weeks to get ready for the biggest moment of her life. She threw herself into practice with renewed energy. She played for hours every day, refining every note, every phrase, every moment of her piece. She practiced her stage presence, learning to walk with confidence, to sit at the piano with grace, to bow properly after finishing. Her grandmother served as her audience, offering feedback and encouragement. 1 week before the competition, something unexpected happened. Maya was practicing in the afternoon when there was a knock on the door. Her grandmother went to answer it and came back looking confused. "Maya," she said, "there is someone here to see you." Maya stopped playing and went to the door. Standing there was a tall woman with elegant gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Maya recognized her immediately. She was one of the judges from the audition. "Hello, Maya," the woman said. My name is Doctor. I am the head of the piano department at the music academy. May I come in? Maya and her grandmother looked at each other in surprise, then quickly invited the woman inside. They apologized for the small apartment and the modest furniture, but Doctor waved away their concerns. I did not come here to judge your home, she said, sitting down in the most comfortable chair they had. I came here because I have not been able to stop thinking about your audition. Maya did not know what to say. She sat down across from Doctor, her hands folded nervously in her lap. In 30 years of teaching piano, Doctor continued, I have heard thousands of young musicians play. Most of them are technically skilled but emotionally empty. They play the notes correctly but they do not understand the music. They have fingers but no soul. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Maya's face. You are different. When you played at the audition, I heard something rare. I heard genuine feeling. I heard a story being told through music. I heard years of struggle and pain and love and hope, all expressed through your fingers on those keys. It was extraordinary. Maya felt her cheeks grow warm. She had never received such praise from anyone besides her grandmother and Mr. The other judges agreed with me, Doctor said. That is why you are the only pianist in the final competition. We did not feel that any of the other piano auditions came close to your level. She paused, studying Maya carefully. I also did some research about you. I found out about your mother and what happened to her. I found out that you taught yourself to play after she died. I found out that a year ago, you came to the community center asking to learn piano and you were turned away. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I want to apologize for that, Doctor said. The woman who turned you away was following rules, but rules should not be used to crush dreams. You deserved a chance then, just as you deserve a chance now. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, which she handed to Maya. This is a letter of recommendation. No matter what happens at the competition, I want you to have this. It will help you apply to music schools and programs in the future. Your talent is too great to be wasted. Whatever path you take, I want to help you succeed. Maya took the envelope with trembling hands. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Doctor stood up to leave. But before she went, she looked around the small apartment and noticed the old piano in the corner. She walked over to it and touched the keys gently. This was your mother's piano. Maya nodded. It is a good instrument, old but good. You can tell that it has been loved. She turned back to Maya with a smile. Play well at the competition. Show everyone what you showed us at the audition. Let them hear your story. After Doctor left, Maya sat quietly for a long time, holding the letter in her hands. Her grandmother sat beside her, neither of them speaking. Words were not needed. They both understood what this visit meant. The final competition was in 1 week. Maya had 1 week to prepare for the performance that would change her life forever. The day of the competition arrived on a beautiful Saturday in spring. The sky was clear and blue, the air was warm and fresh, and flowers were blooming in window boxes all across town. It felt like the whole world was celebrating, even though Maya's stomach was tied in knots. She had not slept well the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the theater full of people, all of them watching her, waiting for her to play. She had dreamed about walking onto the stage and suddenly forgetting everything, her fingers frozen above the keys, unable to move. She had woken up in a cold sweat at 3 in the morning and had not been able to fall back asleep. Now, as she got ready for the competition, she tried to calm herself down. She took a long bath with warm water. She dried her hair carefully and styled it simply, the way her mother used to wear hers. She put on the dress that her grandmother had made, the dark blue one with the white flowers. She looked at herself in the small mirror above her bed and saw a girl who looked older than she felt, more confident than she was. Her grandmother came into the room with a small box in her hands. It was old and worn, its wood scratched and faded. I have been saving this for a special day, her grandmother said. I think today is that day. She opened the box and took out a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant in the shape of a piano. Maya recognized it immediately. It had belonged to her mother. Mother's necklace, Maya breathed. I thought we had sold it with everything else. I could not bring myself to sell this one thing, her grandmother said. It was your mother's favorite. She wore it at every performance. She always said it brought her good luck. Her grandmother fastened the necklace around Maya's neck. The pendant rested against her chest, light and cool. Maya touched it gently, feeling the tiny shape of the piano, imagining her mother's fingers touching the same spot years ago. Now your mother will be with you on that stage, her grandmother said. She will be there in spirit, watching over you, cheering for you. Play for her today, Maya. Play like she is sitting in the front row. Maya hugged her grandmother tightly. Thank you, she said, for everything, for believing in me, for helping me, for keeping the piano and the necklace. I could not have done any of this without you." They took a bus to the theater. The ride was short, but it felt like hours. Maya watched the streets pass by through the window, seeing the town where she had grown up, the places where she had played as a child, the bakery where Mr. made his bread. Everything looked different today, sharper and more vivid, as if she was seeing it all for the first time. The theater was magnificent. It was the oldest and grandest building in town, with tall columns in front and a dome on top that gleamed in the sunlight. A crowd of people was gathered at the entrance, dressed in their finest clothes, talking excitedly among themselves. There were banners everywhere announcing the talent competition, and vendors were selling programs and refreshments. Maya and her grandmother went around to the back of the building, where a separate entrance had been set up for the performers. A security guard checked their names against a list and let them in. They followed signs through a maze of corridors until they reached a large room where the 12 finalists were gathered with their families. Maya looked around at the other competitors. She recognized several faces from the audition. There were violin players and flute players and guitarists. One boy was carrying a cello that was almost as big as he was. Everyone looked nervous, talking in quiet voices, practicing small movements with their fingers. And there in the center of the room, surrounded by admirers, was Charlotte. She was wearing a dress that was even more expensive than the one she had worn at the audition, bright red with gold trim. Her violin case sat beside her, shiny and new. She was laughing at something one of her friends had said, looking completely relaxed, as if this competition was just another ordinary day for her. Charlotte noticed Maya from across the room. For a moment, their eyes met. Charlotte's laugh faded, replaced by a look of surprise that quickly turned into something harder and colder. She whispered something to her friend, who turned to look at Maya and snickered. Maya turned away. She did not want to waste her energy on Charlotte today. She found a quiet corner and sat down with her grandmother, closing her eyes and running through her piece in her mind, note by note. At 2 o'clock, a woman with a clipboard came into the room and announced the order of performances. The names were read out one by one, and Maya listened carefully for hers. Charlotte was number 7. Maya was number 12, the last performer of the day. Being last was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it meant Maya had to wait the longest, watching all the other competitors perform before her, letting her nerves build higher and higher. On the other hand, it meant she would leave the final impression, her music being the last thing the judges and audience would hear before the winner was announced. One by one, the performers were called to the stage. Maya watched them go through a small monitor that had been set up in the waiting room. She saw a young boy play violin with incredible speed and precision. She saw a girl play flute with a sweet, clear tone. She saw other musicians, each talented in their own way, each hoping to win the scholarship that could change their lives. When Charlotte was called, she walked out of the waiting room with her head held high. Her mother followed her to the door, offering whispered words of encouragement. Through the monitor, Maya watched Charlotte take the stage. The audience applauded warmly as she lifted her violin to her shoulder. Charlotte played well. Her technique was flawless, her posture perfect, her movements graceful. She had clearly been trained by the best teachers, had clearly practiced with the best equipment, had clearly been given every advantage that money could buy. When she finished, the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. Charlotte bowed deeply, a satisfied smile on her face. Maya felt a flutter of doubt in her chest. How could she compete with that? Charlotte had been playing for years with professional instruction. Maya had taught herself on an old piano in a cramped apartment. The difference between them seemed impossible to overcome. But then she touched the pendant around her neck, felt the tiny piano against her fingertips, and remembered her mother's words. "Music is not about being perfect," her mother had once said. "Music is about being true. When you play from your heart, people can hear it. They can feel it. That is what separates good musicians from great ones." Maya took a deep breath. She was not trying to be perfect. She was trying to be true. The hours crawled by. One performer after another took the stage, played their piece, and returned to the waiting room. Some looked happy, some looked disappointed, some looked relieved just to have it over with. Maya sat quietly through it all, her grandmother beside her, waiting for her turn. Finally, at 5:30 in the evening, the woman with the clipboard called Maya's name. "Number 12, Maya Piano, please proceed to the stage." Maya stood up. Her legs felt weak, but they held her. She looked at her grandmother, who gave her a smile full of love and pride. "Go show them what you can do," her grandmother said. "I will be watching from the audience. Your mother will be watching from above. We are both so proud of you, no matter what happens." Maya walked out of the waiting room and down the corridor that led to the stage. Her footsteps echoed off the walls. Her heart beat so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She reached the curtain at the side of the stage and paused, taking one last moment to gather herself. Through a gap in the curtain she could see the audience. 500 seats, almost all of them filled. The theater was beautiful, with red velvet seats and golden decorations on the walls and a crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. The grand piano sat center stage, waiting for her, its black surface gleaming under the lights. She thought about everything that had led her to this moment. The morning she had asked to learn piano and had been turned away, the laughter of the children who had mocked her, the year of practicing alone, teaching herself, refusing to give up, the baker's celebration where she had performed for the first time, the audition where the judges had stared at her in silence, doctor's visit and the letter of recommendation in her bag. All of it had been leading to this moment, this stage, this piano, this audience. Maya took one final deep breath. Then she stepped out from behind the curtain and walked onto the stage. The audience fell silent as Maya walked toward the piano. She could feel 500 pairs of eyes on her, watching her every step, judging her simple dress and her borrowed ribbon and her nervous hands. She could see Charlotte sitting in the front row with her mother, a smug expression on her face, already confident that she had won. Maya reached the piano and stood beside it for a moment, looking out at the sea of faces. She spotted her grandmother in the third row, sitting beside Mr. and some of his regular customers who had come to support her. Her grandmother's eyes were bright with tears, and she was clutching her hands together as if in prayer. Maya sat down at the piano bench. She adjusted it slightly, feeling the weight of it beneath her. She placed her fingers on the keys, feeling their familiar smoothness, so different from the yellowed keys of her mother's old piano at home, yet somehow feeling exactly the same. The theater was completely quiet. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even the rustle of fabric. Everyone was waiting. Maya closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids she saw her mother. Not sick, not weak, not lying in a hospital bed, but young and healthy and beautiful, sitting beside Maya on the piano bench in their old living room before the sickness came, before everything changed. Her mother was smiling, her fingers resting on the keys, her voice soft and gentle. "Play from your heart, little bird," her mother said. "Let the music tell your story. That is all you ever need to do." Maya opened her eyes, and she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, like the first rays of sunlight peeking over the horizon at dawn. The melody was simple at first, a gentle sequence that flowed like water over smooth stones. Maya let her fingers move without thinking, trusting the years of practice, trusting the music that lived inside her. The piece began to grow, building slowly, adding layers of complexity. Maya's hands moved faster, covering more of the keyboard, creating harmonies that swelled and faded like waves on a shore. She played the parts that spoke of sadness, of loss, of a little girl who had lost her mother too soon. She let her grief flow through her fingers and into the keys, letting the piano sing the pain she had carried for 2 years. And then the music shifted. The sadness did not disappear, but it transformed into something else, something that was mixed with hope and determination. The tempo increased, the notes came faster, the melody rose higher. This was the part of the piece that spoke of struggle, of a girl who refused to give up, who practiced alone in a tiny apartment, who taught herself what no one would teach her. Maya played with all her strength now, her fingers flying across the keys, the music filling every corner of the massive theater. She forgot about the audience. She forgot about the judges. She forgot about Charlotte and the scholarship and everything else. There was only the music, only the story she was telling, only the connection between her heart and her hands and the instrument beneath them. The piece reached its climax. Maya attacked the most difficult passages with confidence, hitting every note perfectly, creating sounds that seemed to shake the very walls of the theater. The music screamed and soared and flew, expressing emotions that words could never capture. And then, just when it seemed the intensity could not possibly go higher, everything suddenly slowed down. The final section of the piece was quiet and tender, a gentle ending after the storm. Maya played it with tears running down her cheeks, not caring who saw them. This part was for her mother. This was the part that said goodbye and thank you and I love you. This was the part that said, I hope you are proud of me. The last note hung in the air for a long, beautiful moment. Then it faded into silence. Maya lifted her hands from the keys and opened her eyes. The theater was still completely quiet. Not a single sound, not a single movement. Maya's heart dropped. Had she made a mistake? Had she played too emotionally, too differently from what the judges wanted? Then she looked out at the audience, and she saw that almost everyone was crying. Her grandmother was sobbing openly, her face wet with tears. Mr. was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Even Charlotte's mother was dabbing at her cheeks with a tissue, looking shaken. All around the theater, people sat in stunned silence, moved by what they had just heard. And then from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. It was a single pair of hands at first, slow and deliberate. Then another person joined in. Then another. and suddenly the whole theater exploded into applause. People rose to their feet, one by one, then in groups, then all at once. 500 people stood and clapped and cheered and shouted praise. The sound was overwhelming, filling the theater like a flood, surrounding Maya and lifting her up. She had never heard anything so loud, so full of emotion, so genuine. Maya stood up from the piano bench and bowed, just as she had practiced. When she raised her head, she saw her grandmother standing in the audience, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt, tears still streaming down her face but now mixed with the biggest smile Maya had ever seen. She walked off the stage in a daze. The applause followed her, continuing even after she disappeared behind the curtain. Someone backstage handed her a glass of water, but she could not drink it because her hands were shaking too badly. Other performers came up to her, competitors who had seemed cold and distant before, now offering congratulations and praise. 20 minutes later, the judges took the stage to announce the results. Maya stood in the wings with the other finalists, her heart racing. Charlotte stood nearby, her confident expression now replaced by something less certain. The head judge, Doctor, held the microphone. She thanked everyone for coming, praised all the performers, and spoke about the importance of nurturing young talent. Maya barely heard any of it. She was waiting for the only words that mattered. And now, Doctor said, the moment you have all been waiting for. The winner of this year's talent competition and the recipient of the full scholarship to the Music Academy is. She paused. The entire theater held its breath. Maya. The world seemed to stop for a moment. Maya heard her name, but it did not feel real. It felt like a dream, like something that was happening to someone else. Then the other performers were hugging her and pushing her toward the stage, and she was walking into the light, and the audience was applauding again, and it was real. It was really happening. She accepted the scholarship certificate from Doctor with trembling hands. Doctor leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Your mother would be so proud of you." Maya looked out at the audience. She found her grandmother's face in the crowd, shining with joy and pride. She thought about her mother, somewhere beyond the stars, watching over her, loving her, finally seeing the promise fulfilled. She stepped up to the microphone. She had not prepared a speech, had not even imagined she might need one. But the words came from her heart, just like the music had. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "2 years ago I lost my mother. She was a piano teacher and she promised to teach me to play. But she got sick before she could keep that promise. After she died, I thought about giving up music forever, but I could not, because music was how I stayed connected to her. Every time I played, I felt her beside me." She paused, touching the pendant around her neck. "A year ago, I came to the community center and asked to learn piano. I was turned away. Some children laughed at me. They told me I could never be a pianist because I was poor and had no teacher. They were wrong. You do not need expensive lessons to learn music. You do not need fancy clothes or shiny instruments. All you need is love and dedication and a reason to keep going, even when it gets hard." She looked directly at Charlotte, who was standing at the edge of the stage, her face pale. "To anyone watching who has a dream that seems impossible, please do not give up. Keep practicing, keep believing, keep going, because you never know when your moment will come." The audience applauded again, a long and warm applause that seemed to go on forever. Maya walked off the stage and into her grandmother's arms. Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and the theater had emptied, Maya and her grandmother walked home together. The streets were dark and quiet, lit only by and the stars above. Maya held her scholarship certificate in one hand and her grandmother's hand in the other. When they reached their apartment, Maya went straight to her mother's piano. She sat down and touched the familiar keys, feeling their worn surfaces beneath her fingertips. She thought about how far she had come, from that first morning of asking for lessons to this night of triumph. She began to play softly, a simple melody that her mother had taught her years ago, the very first song she had ever learned. As she played, she looked up at the ceiling, imagining her mother somewhere above, listening. "I did it, Mother," she whispered. "I kept my promise. I hope I made you proud." And somewhere in that quiet apartment above the bakery, Maya could have sworn she heard her mother's voice, gentle and warm and full of love. "You did, my little bird, you did."